This call is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please disconnect at this time.
I'm Eric Spencer, President and CEO of the Greater North Dakota Chamber, North Dakota's largest statewide business support association. We are proud to facilitate this COVID-19 North Dakota business briefing held in partnership with the state of North Dakota, and would like to thank our trade association, local chamber, and Main Street partners for their help in spreading the word about this important call. The agenda and list of speakers for today's briefing can be found on ndchambers.com. COVID-19 presents a historic public health situation along with great economic uncertainty. And the purpose of this call is to keep business leaders informed with factual information and resources as we all try to plan a course through this. And as the governor has said, come out stronger and smarter. Today, there are nearly 1,000 participants calling into this briefing, so all lines will be muted. If you are one of our speakers, and only if you are one of our speakers, when it's your turn to speak, press star, then #6 to unmute. Now, when everyone registered, everyone had the opportunity to send in questions. Those questions were then directed to the appropriate state agency. Today, our speakers will try to cover as many of those questions as possible. Because of the large number of callers, no live questions will be taken today. Now, for members of the media on the call, if you want additional comments, please contact state officials individually at the conclusion of this call. I'd like to mention that both Senator Kramer and Congressman Armstrong are personally on the call today. We'd like to thank them for their interest, but there are staff from our entire delegation on the phone who care very much about the future of North Dakota's business climate. With that, I'd like to thank Michelle Comer, North Dakota's Commerce Commissioner, and Governor Burgum for their effort in coordinating this briefing with a number of state agencies and our team here at GNDC. And so with that, I'd like to introduce the Governor of the great state of North Dakota, Doug Burgum.
Morning, Eric. Thank you, and thanks to all of our business leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs, and innovators from across the state that are dialing in this morning. We want to lead with gratitude because, of course, as we know, heading into this, North Dakota had one of the strongest economies in the nation, some of the lowest unemployment. Now we find ourselves a month later, along with the rest of the nation and the rest of the world, facing a completely different situation than perhaps anyone could have imagined. But this is going to be a test of leadership at all levels. And we talk a lot in the state of North Dakota about leadership everywhere, and you're going to hear from some great leaders across all of our state agencies and state organizations that are working in concert with all of you, the private sector, to help our citizens, help your team members, help your customers make it through this challenging time. Some of you may have seen the press release we just sent out a few minutes ago confirming that we have 8 additional cases of COVID-19 in North Dakota. But the cases that are coming in today, yesterday we announced the first ones that were community spread, as in that we cannot identify where or who they were in contact with that might have been traveling. So it means that the COVID is active in the community. The 2 community spread cases yesterday were both in Burleigh County, and the 8 more that came up today are in Morton and Burleigh County, including from Morton County, a man in his 60s, and Burleigh County, a woman in her 50s, a man in his 70s, a man in his 40s, a woman in her 20s, a man in his 30s, a woman in her 20s, and a man in his 60s. And so we've doubled from yesterday. We've been saying this for several weeks, that when COVID gets rolling, it has the ability to double because of the transmission rate. And this is why we've been proactive with schools and businesses and other organizations in trying to make sure that we're reducing the distance between people. Social distancing is a new phrase we're all learning, but this is a disease that can be spread through contact, or through sneezing or coughing through droplets. It's not through airborne. It's great to get outside and take a walk, get some fresh air, but it's about that social distancing. Today at 4 o'clock at our press conference, we'll be providing additional guidelines and recommendations for schools and businesses related to this new information and related to our updated guidance. But for today, we want to focus on the second aspect of this, because while we have a health crisis going on like we haven't faced before, that health crisis is also creating an economic crisis, and we've got leaders from across our state that are on the call today that are all working as part of our whole of government and whole of community approach to try to address both the economic crisis and the health crisis. There's a third battle that we're facing, and it's why I'm so grateful that all of you are on here, and that's the battle of information. There's as much information as there is about this. There's enormous amounts of misinformation that's available online, and people do look to their employers, their community leaders, their chamber leaders as trusted vehicles for information. So again, thank you for taking the time to get on the call today to keep informed. Thanks for tuning into our 4 p.m. Press conferences that we're holding daily to make sure that you can help be as part of that leadership everywhere, delivering the facts, not fear, and part of that state of calm that we're trying to achieve, so we can continue to execute and coordinate well in the private sector and the public sector as we go through this emergency. So with that, again, grateful to have all of you on here, and thanks for your leadership. And on behalf of Lieutenant Governor Brent Sanford and myself, First Lady Catherine, we just, again, thank you for your leadership, and hope that you're doing everything you can to keep yourselves and your families and your team members safe as we work through this. And the real solution is for us to figure out in North Dakota, how do we achieve the social distancing, but then how do we keep doing the things that we need to do? How do we keep utilities and infrastructure? How do we keep food service? How do we keep educational activities? How do we keep delivering childcare? So it's not about we have to be thinking about not just stopping everything, but how do we figure out a way to operate in a new world under some new challenges, and that's we know that North Dakotans can innovate and figure that out, and look forward to working with you as we navigate through these uncharted territories. I'll turn it back over to Eric. No, actually, I'm going to hand it right over to Michelle Comer, Commissioner of North Dakota Department of Commerce.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you to GNDC and our federal delegation, and of course the Governor Burgum for his amazing leadership during this time, and all of you for attending today. The purpose of this call today is to provide information that is helpful right now. Most of the content that will follow is based on questions that you have had. This is a rapidly changing environment, and this is the first of many calls. In addition, we will refine a communication network to ensure that we are utilizing chambers, local and regional economic development teams, among other networks, as well as social media and other communication mechanisms. Right now, if you do not already follow Commerce on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, please follow those pages, because we will be distributing real-time information through those sites, and I hope that you will share those with your communities as well. We want you to know, as Governor Burgum said, that we are taking a whole-of-government approach so that you do not have to navigate our system on your own. While Commerce has taken the lead in coordinating, this has been an easy job. I'm so thankful to every state agency leader and elected official, as well as our business partners and all of you, because we are in this together. You'll hear a number of speakers today that will answer questions that you have submitted. Others that aren't speaking today but are supporting this effort include Al Jaeger, our Secretary of State, Doug Goring, our Ag Commissioner, Scott Davis, our Commissioner of Indian Affairs, and many others. And as I said, this will be the first of many calls and other communication mechanisms to share information real time, and there will likely be other contributors in the future. We are committed to being a trusted provider of accurate and timely business and employer resources relating to this pandemic. We want you to know that we have a team of researchers that are working to understand federal legislation as it relates to employers and employees, which you'll hear a little bit more about today. At Commerce, we have redirected staff and financial resources to assist in this emergency. We have created a one-stop webpage with COVID-19 related employer resources, combining information from across all of state government. The next phase of this effort will be employee resources. Like you, we have received hundreds of emails and seen a number of similar sites being developed. We do not want to interrupt local and regional efforts, nor do we want to duplicate efforts. We ask that if you are creating similar resource pages, that you include a link to this site because it will be updated always with the most current information. And if you receive information that you think should be there, please notify us. I want to thank you again for your participation today, and I would like to introduce my colleague, James Lamond, who is the Director of Economic Development and Finance, to discuss what we know about developing federal assistance, current resources, and your call to action. Thank you again. James?
Thank you, Commissioner, and good morning. I'm James Lamond, Director of Economic Development and Finance at the North Dakota Department of Commerce. I'd like to thank you for joining us this morning. First, I want to re-emphasize that we're with you every step of the way. Second, I'm going to emphasize that we just deployed a website, and it's super important because it's updated in real time. Sarah will discuss that a little bit later from the Commerce team. And third, Commerce has mobilized and is on top of both federal and state actions to make this as seamless and as least difficult possible for you. I'd also like to thank the congressional delegation, Senators Hoeven and Kramer, as well as Representative Armstrong. They're working really hard on our behalf in Washington. Legislative phases 1 and 2 are complete, and we'll talk about that here shortly. And now we have immediate relief for sick leave, unemployment, and other programs such as WIC, food banks, nutritious programs such as SNAP, in-home delivery for seniors, the works. And what's important about that is these are programs that are deployed to take care of families that have been impacted, basically the employees that are going to be coming off your payrolls if they come off your payrolls. Note that our federal delegation has placed phase 1 and 2 in place to offset some of those pain points. In addition, in Washington, phase 3 is currently being negotiated. Additional small business assistance is anticipated, as well as cash payments to families. This frequently is evolving. I think the president is on right now with the COVID-19 team at the national level. So we'll be tracking this and getting information as it develops to you from the federal level. In addition to the congressional delegation, the administration is working very hard. New executive orders are rapidly being developed and signed. For example, yesterday, the Defense Production Act was invoked. What's really important about that is if you have a manufacturing facility right now and you have supply chain constraints and or you've got capacity in place, contact us. We could use the Procurement Technical Assistance Center and maybe get you some of those voids that you currently have and focus on some federal opportunities that may be coming down the pike really quickly. So just note that there's a rapidly evolving federal process as well as state, and we will constantly put information out that is both opportunistic for your businesses in the event you have shortcomings elsewhere, as well as informational if there are programs that you can take advantage of. Now, regarding the state or more or less financing right now, which is probably what you're wondering, Commerce, as well as the rest of the state team, suggests a 3-step process. First, we'd like you to go to your local bank. And the reason why we'd like you to go to the local bank is because they're going to know your situation much better than either the North Dakota Department of Commerce, the Bank of North Dakota, or the SBA. Stop there first, talk to them. They're likely just as interested in working with you on this because of the temporary financial constraints you may have. And in addition to that, the Federal Reserve is working daily to add liquidity into the environment to meet business requirements across the country. So bottom line, check with your local bankers first. Your next stop after checking with your local bank is to consult an SBA a small business disaster loan. Al Hutt of the North Dakota office for the SBA will follow me, but we did have a memo sent regarding the disaster declaration, and as he'll mention today, sometime today or tomorrow, that should be in full swing. So for those of you that are experiencing challenges online, you could send those applications to the Department of Commerce. You'll see points of contact on your website, and we'll make sure we get it to the right folks at SBA in the event you're having problems on the front end because the actual switch hasn't been flipped on the federal side. So there is another option to get that in. So first stop, bank. Second stop, try the SBA Disaster Business Loan Declaration. And again, Commerce can help, and I'll talk to you in a minute about how we're positioned to most effectively help you. Your third stop should be state programs. The North Dakota Department of Commerce has several options available within the North Dakota Development Fund. I'm going to start with small communities. So if you are in a community of 2,500 or less, the North Dakota Department of Commerce can work with your community managers on an essential service loan. Now, there's a one-to-one match requirement up to $75,000 on each end, but we do have money available today for that. I recognize North Dakota traditionally is a very conservative state, especially communities given their limited resources, but I am asking communities as well as businesses at this time to start thinking or take an open approach so that we can assist funding essential services through this mechanism. So that is something I'm throwing out there. It requires a one-for-one match, but understand we have money in place for those essential services. Examples would be pharmacies, gas stations, supermarkets, restaurants that have multifaceted purposes like restaurants, or rather supermarkets or markets. So contact Commerce. We can get you more information on that. Same thing with our primary sector companies. You know who you are in ag, energy, tech, et cetera, manufacturing. We do have programs up to $1 million today available in that bucket. Note that we are looking at maybe working on bridge loans or something over a 2 to 3 month period. The North Dakota Development Fund Board is meeting as we speak to discuss through those options, but understand for primary sector companies and communities of all sizes, go ahead and leverage this program as well. And then lastly, but not least, at least within the development fund framework, we do have the Childcare loan program. You'll learn a little bit more from Sean at Commerce here, but just know that we've got a program in place specifically for child care providers across the state. So the key takeaway there is start with your local bank, then consult the SBA. We've got the Commerce North Dakota Development Fund options that I highlighted, and then we also have some Bank of North Dakota programs such as Flex, Pace, and PACE, which Eric Hardmeyer may discuss here shortly. In addition to the financial posture we have, just note that we are committed to delivering quality, instant, and high-impact services to our community across the board. So what we've effectively done, and you'll see this on the website, is by region, we have folks that are assigned to you. Contact those folks right away if you have any questions regarding federal or state resources, and if possible, if we can't answer the question, we'll go back to the folks within our networks to ensure we get an answer with you. Simultaneous to our geographical deployment, if you will, the Small Business Development Center as well as local developers across the state are working hand in hand with us to ensure that we have a capacity to handle the volume across communities in the state. So note that it's not just Commerce, it's a full team effort, federal, state, local, and we've been able to develop the requisite local tiger teams, if you will, through this regional approach to ensure we can meet your needs in real time. Don't worry about the hours. We're not moving at the speed. We're moving at the speed of business, not the speed of 8 to 5. So if you have questions, contact this group. Also contact me. I am available all the time. My team's available, and we will get to you whenever you need that assistance and work with you on getting you to the right program and or person. With that, I'd like to transition and also introduce the SBA Director for the state of North Dakota to discuss the Small Business Administration approach, Mr. Al Hout.
Thank you, James. Thank you, James. SBA is in the process of approving the governor's request right now to have North Dakota included in the coronavirus declaration. We expect that declaration to be approved by our headquarter office today. Later today, they'll roll out the website, open up the application portal sometime today or very early tomorrow. This will allow small businesses and private nonprofits to apply for economic injury disaster loans, or as we call them, EIDLs. These are working capital loans directly from SBA. They don't have to go through a bank or any other resource. These funds can be used to pay debts, make payroll, pay accounts payable, and other bills that would have been paid had the disaster not occurred. So that needs to be designated or detailed in the application process that these would have been paid except for the disaster. These loans are not intended for expansion or to cover profits, things like that. Once the declaration is approved, you'll see an update not only on the Commerce's COVID pages, but also on SBA's application page. and businesses can apply directly to SBA at www.sba.gov/disaster. With that, I'd like to introduce Eric Hardmeyer, President of the Bank of North Dakota. Eric?
Thank you, Al. Appreciate the opportunity to visit with all of you today and for putting this together. As we think about the Bank of North Dakota and our role in responding to this economic crisis, we see three different areas where we can help. I think the first area would be to provide liquidity to state government. We want to make sure that all of state agencies have access to their funding for services that they provide, and B&D stands ready to assist with that type of service. Secondly, as was mentioned by James, we will be working with North Dakota banks, SBA, Commerce, to determine if there is a role for the Bank of North Dakota to supplement or augment federal programs. As we've done before with flood disasters and ag disasters, the Bank of North Dakota stands ready to work with the local banking community to assist and provide relief wherever we can. I think the third area is we want to take a look at our existing portfolio, and today we are hearing a lot of concerns from student loan borrowers, homeowners, people that have used our other disaster programs before. Will there be relief, payment relief? Those are all things that I think that we need to be looking at, and we need to be looking at very hard. So I think you can expect that the Bank of North Dakota will be flexible, will be nimble. Our resources to assist in all of these areas will measure in the billions. So we have liquidity, and we will make more liquidity available to address this issue. So I think you have a partner here that has been through some of these issues, not on this scale, but certainly we've been down this road with other disasters before, and we stand ready to help wherever we can. One other issue that I did want to mention is that we are hearing from political subdivisions, we're hearing from cities, counties, that they also too are looking at liquidity needs that they might have as they look at their revenues coming in, whether it's sales tax or other city fees, and knowing that over the next few weeks, months, those are going to be dramatically impacted. So we understand that issue. We'll be working with our partners in other state agencies to determine what is the appropriate response for you. So I think the good news here is that the state agencies will be working together, collaborating to roll out assistance where possible. So with that, let me pass it on to Sean Kessel, who is the Deputy Commissioner in the Department of Commerce. Sean?
Thank you, Bank President Hardmeyer. I appreciate that. As you all know, childcare is an essential part of community infrastructure. As a member of the Main Street Initiative team, we've heard this verified in community after community, and when we conduct listening sessions across North Dakota. We're here today to help you identify resources, answer some questions, and provide some insights that may help you guide community conversations. When you're having these community conversations, we ask that child care providers be included and have a seat at the table. Having enough child care provides many benefits to a community beyond the provision of quality child care, like allowing parent or parents to work outside the home. And some of these parents work in essential jobs like fire, police, emergency responders, healthcare workers, utilities, etc. Child care is predominantly provided by the private sector. It's a large system. There's around 1,800 child care providers in North Dakota supporting 18,000 families and almost 45,000 children between the ages of 0 and 5. Approximately 10% receive federal and/or state support through a variety of programs, and many of these providers were at or near capacity before COVID-19. We anticipate that if the COVID-19 virus is found in a child care setting, some of them may close. If that does happen, the North Dakota Department of Human Services, DHS, should be notified within 24 hours. They have excellent resources on their website at www.nd.gov/DHS. Also, Childcare Aware should be made aware of any closures, and their number is 1-800-997-8515. We do anticipate and are planning for these closures, as I mentioned earlier, and most childcare, as I said, is operating at or near capacity, so the loss of even one provider in a community will have ripple effects in that community. School closures have also impacted childcare providers by pushing some of those younger students into childcare, so we're working with the K-12 system to provide options. We're also aware that a lot of times grandma and grandpa have been enlisted to help in providing childcare. And that population is vulnerable if they fit into the proper age group or have pre-existing conditions. So we're working with providers and other experts to provide options. And once those are identified and developed, we'll discuss those in the future calls that have been mentioned today. Childcare Aware North Dakota has a number of resources available for both families and childcare providers related to the COVID-19. And you can find them on those resources at www.northdakotachildcare.org. And I mentioned the North Dakota Department of Health website earlier. Many of the financial options that have been covered by Director Lamont and President Hardemeyer and others on this call are also available to child care providers. In addition, I want to call one of these out specifically, and that's the Otto Bremer Trust. They've made $50 million available in our region for community organizations that have been impacted by COVID-19. Now, I understand that applying for grants can be time-consuming and sometimes confusing, and Strengthen ND is providing free technical assistance on accessing the Otto Bremer funding. And you can contact Strengthen ND at megan@strengthennd.com. That's Megan, MEGAN, @strengthennd.com. The Small Business Development Centers also have a network across North Dakota and have been very helpful in providing information and advice. I'm sure some of that advice would be to make sure that you're maintaining good accounting records to track your COVID-19 related expenses. In closing, I'd like to say thank you for your dedication to being informed and to planning rather than panicking. And by introducing our next speaker, he's the Executive Director of Workforce Safety and Insurance and Job Service North Dakota, and he'll be addressing unemployment insurance questions, Mr. Brian Klipfel.
Good morning, this is Michelle Comer speaking. In Brian's absence, until he speaks up, I can speak on his behalf. I want to say that we did receive a number of questions relating to unemployment insurance, and I hope that these remarks answer many of them. This is a very rapidly evolving area. My colleague James already mentioned that many of the things that are being contemplated federally, and we are tracking those things very closely. First, I want to share a few basic facts that are responsive to questions that have been asked. First, if an individual was laid off and qualified for benefits, they could receive unemployment benefits. If an employee quits, it remains true that they are not eligible for benefits. Currently, there is a 1-week waiting period for benefits. As of right now, that has not been changed, and the change, if any, is being considered. If an employee has to stay home because they must care for a child who is home from school, current unemployment law does not allow for unemployment insurance benefits to these individuals that are not laid off by their employer. Again, these things are all being considered in real time.
Hey, Michelle?
Yes,
Michelle, can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, sorry, a little technical difficulties here, but thank you, everybody, and thanks, Michelle, for covering some of the stuff already. But so I won't go over the stuff that Michelle covered, but really this information is changing so fast, and you know, there's just constantly new things coming out there. But we're doing the best we can, and we also have had there were several questions related to how is Job Service going to handle the claims come in, and we have been working on that very diligently to make sure that we have the staff and so forth ready, and we're going to redirect some staff to take care of some of the claims that come in. And so we're considering, other ways to meet demands. And so that's one thing I want to assure the businesses and the employees out there that we are definitely working on. Also, I think James covered a little bit on the House Resolution 6201 that was just passed, Family First Coronavirus Response Act. And there was a section in there dealing with unemployment insurance. And so we are looking at that. We have monitored that bill all the way through. The extended benefit program changes are important, but will take significant amount of time before a state would be eligible to have extended benefit programs, but we are working on that. Under the normal employment insurance programs, individuals can receive between 12 and 26 weeks of benefits, and with this act, that could be extended. Also, that the other thing is the resolution does provide for the ability to no charge an employer for COVID-19 based claims. However, what that means is that the individual employer would not be charged, but the employers in the whole state would be charged for those costs. So the non-charging will ultimately impact North Dakota unemployment insurance tax rates for future years. But that's something we don't worry about now because we got to figure this how to handle this situation. Also, there was some questions on what happens if there are layoffs, and basically if the business closes and there are layoffs, the employer must notify the individual that they may be eligible for benefits. And depending upon the size of the employer, they may submit a warn notice. And warn notice goes to job service. And a warn notice is when a business with 100 or more full-time workers, is laying off at least 50 people at a single site of employment, or employs 100 or more workers who work at least a combined 4,000 hours. And that's all on our website. And those would be the notifications that we have. Like I said, there's a lot of information coming in, and we are, this is coming in rapidly, and we will communicate through our website. A lot of this information can be obtained there, and through our Economic Response Center, they would have access to that. And then also, if there's any calls, we're going to, hopefully we can handle most of the calls that come in too. So, thank you, everybody. Next speaker will be Erica Thunder. She's the Commissioner of North Dakota Labor and Human Rights.
Thank you so much, Brian. As Brian said, my name is Erica Thunder, and I serve as the Commissioner for the North Dakota Department of Labor and Human Rights. I do just want to quickly share a great amount of gratitude to the Greater North Dakota Chamber, Governor Burgum, our federal delegation joining us on the line, the North Dakota Department of Commerce, Commissioner Comer, and all of the other speakers on the line. I feel extremely grateful to be a part of this team of resources, information, and of course, a sincere thanks to all of you who have joined us today on the line from the business sector and are continuing to do such great work. To that end, thank you for the questions you submitted relating to labor law and the current COVID-19 pandemic. I received questions from the group in two related areas. First, paid time off, generally and under these special circumstances, and second, the distinction between exempt and non-exempt employees and how to ensure they are properly paid. So to begin with, I'll begin talking about paid time off. Many of us understand it otherwise as PTO. So for your listening ears today, if you hear me say PTO, I am referring to paid time off. And PTO is either exactly that, paid time off or personal time off, where employers provide a bank of hours in which the employer pools sick days, vacation days, and the personal days that allows for employees to use as they need or the desire arises. No state or federal laws require an employer to provide PTO. Therefore, an employer can set all of the terms and conditions for the use of and awarding of PTO. Relative to the current pandemic, we are aware that some employers are requiring employees to stay home and self-quarantine. In the examples of both with and without pay, as well as with and or without the use of PTO. I want to stress that the employer has sole discretion as to making these decisions. Separate from this question, but an important reminder, if an employer is requiring an employee to undergo COVID-19 testing, the employer is responsible for the cost of that testing. Another question relating to PTO and the COVID-19 pandemic may be whether an employer may designate employees as essential or non-essential via its employee handbook or other guiding policies, and therefore apply different PTO requirements. As I mentioned, the employer has the sole discretion to make these designations and may treat essential and non-essential employees differently with regard to their PTO policies, so long as the differing treatment is not related to any protected class. And for your guidance, those classes legally include those protected under race, color, religion, sex, as in gender, and national origin, as well as those who are disabled, either physically or mentally. The next topic that I wanted to cover that we also received, and I received for my labor questions here, specifically involves exempt versus non-exempt employees. The difference between non-exempt and exempt status for employees is important to understand, as it may affect how an employee is properly paid. These terms refer to exemption or non-exemption from the Fair Labor Standards Act, which is a federal act. Terms you or your employees may also use for these statutes are salaried and hourly, which are not necessarily technically accurate, but it may be a less formal way of how you have heard non-exempt and exempt employees described as. I would like to note that North Dakota's labor law may differ from the Fair Labor Standards Act, the federal act. In the cases where you may have a question of whether federal or state law applies, the rule that we follow at the Department of Labor and Human Rights is that the law applies is in that which is most favorable to the employee. A non-exempt employee is paid based on the work performed on an hourly, salary, daily, and or piece rate. A non-exempt employee is entitled to an overtime rate for any hours worked over 40 in a single work week. An exempt employee is paid on a salary basis for the job performed, not the number of hours of work performed. An exempt employee is not entitled to overtime wages. If your operations are closed, you may wonder whether you have to pay an employee who is then not able to work. The answer really depends on the employee's exemption status. A non-exempt employee does not have to be paid if no work was performed. Under the Fair Labor Standards Act, an exempt employee is entitled to receive their regular salary if they are ready, willing, and able to work, but no work was available. This may differ if your employee is a school teacher, a union employee, or other employee working under a contract. In these cases, you must review the terms of that contract. Generally, the contract will govern how an employee will be paid under these types of circumstances. I'd like to close with saying the North Dakota Department of Labor and Human Rights has worked closely with the Department of Commerce to place a thorough FAQ that includes these answers along with others on the Business Employer Resource site, and we will continue to update that as new questions arise. The same is true for the Department of Labor and Human Rights' own website. You may find a very thorough FAQ there, other educational and legal information, resources, etc., and that website is nd.gov/labor. Thank you all again for tuning in. Take care, and I will next be introducing North Dakota's Tax Commissioner, Ryan Rauschenberger, who will be speaking on your North Dakota tax questions. Thank you again.
Thanks, Erica, and thanks to everybody for organizing this call. Thanks to the State Chamber, the Commerce Department, Governor. I just have a few quick points I want to make. First, the federal government, as you've probably heard, has extended the April 15th deadline to pay income taxes up to $1 million for individuals and $10 million for corporations out to July 15th. Keep in mind, the deadline to file the federal tax forms is still April 15th. So there's a little disconnect there, but you can actually delay your payment up to 90 days. The federal extension, again, is only the payment of the tax. The April 15th deadline to file taxes is still in place, or to file the forms is still in place. And that move by Treasury, the motive for that is to keep about $300 billion of liquidity in the system in the near term. As for state income tax filing deadline, we're mostly status quo. So April 15th is still the deadline to file and pay taxes. As always, taxpayers can file for an extension, but as a reminder, that's only extension to file and not an extension to pay your taxes. So taxes owed or that you estimate are owed are still due on April 15th. However, taxpayers who are impacted by COVID-19 related issues, whether that's business shutdown, can't access the appropriate information because employees aren't able to get access to it, or hardship to pay because of business disruption, they should first go to the common site dedicated to employers for COVID-19 that we've talked about today, the main COVID-19 response site set up by Commerce, where they can then get access to our site, which is nd.gov/tax. So go to the main COVID-19 site and then go to nd.gov/tax, where you have all the contact information where you can email or call us. And we can then grant extensions based on COVID-19 related inability to file or pay individual or business income taxes. For all of our other 30 tax types that we administer, basically all of them are business-related tax types. Pretty much the same rationale. Anyone who can't meet a deadline to file and pay related to a COVID-19 issue, again, all those business disruptions, can't get access to the information or business hardships, can contact our office. Again, I recommend going through the main site first to answer all of your COVID-19 related questions, the Commerce website, and then go to our which will lead you to a link to our website, nd.gov/tax. That will get you to the eventual either email or phone line that will get you directly to the tax type experts that you need to talk to. So with that, I would like to introduce the next speaker today, our Insurance Commissioner, John Godfrey.
Thanks, Commissioner Rauschenberger. I've got a couple points to make, and thank you to everybody for being on the call. I think we need to recognize that this is a unique time we're in. And this is a unique response to having all of the government response to this. I know, speaking with my colleagues across the country, I want to assure you that this isn't happening everywhere, and so the fact that we've been able to pull everybody together like this and provide these resources is something that we need to recognize as one of a great strength of ours here in North Dakota. A couple points I got to make is one, just again, you've heard it many times on this phone call, is to rely on our state resources here for the information you're getting. The unfortunate thing about misinformation is it can spread very quickly because it's just made up. And so I just want to encourage you to utilize the one-stop shop that we're setting up as your main source of information. We are going to be updating that as near real time as we possibly can. You've heard from a lot of the experts on the phone today. We've got the experts in just about every single area that may impact you, and those informations will be available on the Commerce website, and then if you continue to dig further, there'll be other links that you need to find out. That's honestly one of the great things about technology, is that we can all come together, and in this time of social distancing and difficulties like that, we're still able to provide the response that we believe you need, and I'm confident that we're going to continue to do that. One piece on insurance-related issues would be one, the business interruption insurance. I know we've received a lot of questions on that, and I just want to caution you a little bit that there is, whether it's business interruption, continued business income insurance, or civil authority coverage, a lot of those go back to a physical damage requirement for the loss to be triggered. As it stands right now, a pandemic of this nature is not considered a physical loss. I do want to assure you that we're working through this. The federal government is looking at this. So again, it's a continuation of an all-government response on how to handle this, and really the mantra that we're providing to our companies is sharing in the pain at this point. We're going to see a lot of pain across the state and across the country, and everybody's got a role to play in that. But I want to assure you that we're continuing to work on some of those questions and some of those definitions, if you will. but it brings to point the importance of continuing to look at the other programs that are going to be available that were outlined by James and other speakers on this phone, that you sitting back and relying on and hoping on that your insurance may cover this is a little bit of a dangerous game to play at this point. So I know it's not the best news, but it's just, I stress and the importance for you all to be looking at the different resources that are coming available. Also, many of these decisions are policy specific, so you need to be talking with your agent and having some of those discussions, as they will know your business better than we do. So that's where we're at. Again, I want to encourage you to use the Commerce website as a starting point for this information. On our website, that'll link you to that. We've got information as well for your employees on health insurance, travel insurance, life insurance, a lot of just about every line of insurance you can be thinking of, and how COVID is affecting some of those discussions. So, again, encourage you to use the resources we're providing to you through the state. Those are going to be probably the most reliable and hopefully updated as soon as we possibly can. But again, we're getting questions coming at us fast and furious, and we're doing our very best to answer them as quickly as we can. With that, I'll turn it over to Sarah Coleman to, I think, further discuss some of the other resources that are available. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Gottfried, and thanks, everyone, for participating. As you've heard, the Department of Commerce today has launched a web page dedicated to business and community resources affected by the coronavirus. The site is located within Commerce's current site under Economic Development and Finance, and the new page is designed to provide real-time updates on information pertaining to both state and federal resources available to business and communities affected economically as a result of the current public health threat. Topics are grouped in 5 areas: finance, labor, insurance, tax, and workplace safety. And they're consolidated on an easy-to-navigate page, creating a one-stop resource for businesses and communities across the state. The best place to access it is commerce.nd.gov. Again, that's commerce.nd.gov, but it's cross-populated and there's a lot of easy paths to get there. If you go to nd.gov, go to the bar that we've created at the top, that takes you to the health page, and we have a box on that main prominent page that's called Business and Employers. So that's another easy way to get there. This page is just one of many steps taken by Commerce in proactive response to the COVID-19 crisis. The site will be evolving. How fast information is coming in and changing, and as needs and resources change, our goal is to really provide the most current and business relevant information available. Again, business relevant. We're not going to duplicate what you're finding in other areas. We have also added a news section. Here we'll populate all of the most recent news releases. I believe that's also, we'll put like the recording of this call. We're all under tremendous pressure, and one of the goals of this site was to really provide an easy button for other organizations to link to. So hopefully this can save you time, and we don't need to duplicate. You don't maybe need to create your own. If you do have your own already, we'd appreciate cross-linking so again that we can all make sure that we're sharing the best and most current information. As you know, the travel industry is probably the hardest hit. So I briefly wanted to mention that external tourism marketing promotions have been reviewed and revised to reflect the current environment. We will not go dark, however. We have an advisory on our consumer site and have some information on closures. We really think now is the time where we have to continue to be inspirational. People need some inspiration. And wide open spaces will be especially appealing visuals to the millions of Americans looking for options for free travel once this is passed. So in closing, we're confident we can provide the comprehensive business-related information you need, and we can't address every question. We did review all of the questions that you submitted, and that really helped us build some of the content out. But we'll also have, this is the first step, so we'll continue to build that content as we build out the site. Additional feedback is always welcome. There's an information, an easy way to provide information or request information. So you've heard a lot of information today. Speaking of that, this call's been recorded, as I mentioned, so it will be available on the site. Again, appreciate ideas on how to improve, and we won't include everything, but we will definitely take a look at everything and try to provide the most relevant. And with that, I will pass it back to Eric Spencer, President of the Greater North Dakota Chamber.
Thanks, Sarah. I'll just make a few brief comments, and then I'm going to kick it back to the governor. But you heard that this is going to be recorded. We will look at partnering to hold calls in the future because it's important to get factual information out about resources that are available. And so with that, I'll turn it back to the governor for his closing comments.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks to all of our presenters today. Let me close with some gratitude and also just some thoughts. From the gratitude side, again, fabulous collaboration and leadership across all the cabinet agencies and the electeds. I especially want to give a shout out to the two elected presenters here, Commissioner Ryan Rauschenberger and Commissioner John Gottfried. Thanks for being such great partners with us as we work through the economic side of this crisis. Also, again, Senator Hoeven, Senator Kramer, Congressman Armstrong, everybody on this call should know that we've got one of the strongest, most business-oriented delegations of any state. These three are fighting for us every day down in D.C., and you can see that the results are coming in terms of record amounts of federal assistance. It's unprecedented, but it absolutely positively needs to be unprecedented. When we've got a over $20 trillion U.S. economy, and then people kind of get wowed by a $1 trillion aid package, well, that's would represent 5% of our amazing national economy's GDP. So they're working at the right scale and the right speed. And again, thank you to everybody in our congressional delegation and their staffs for the great work they're doing. Back in the North Dakota side, I know that right now that all of you are thinking about, what do I do about continuation of my business? What do I do in taking care of my team if I can't they can't be working, and how do we deal with all the issues that are talked in this call about unemployment? You're worried about daycare and schooling for your team members. I'm super empathetic to all of you, and please know that I'm so grateful that I had a chance to spend virtually my entire business career working in North Dakota. Starting out as a startup, as a small business owner, at one point, had the honor to be running one of the largest businesses in North Dakota, then was back as doing startups and running small businesses again. I've been connected with the GNDC for over 3 decades during my time in the private sector, and I want to thank GNDC for their leadership and for pulling together this call, and for everybody that serves on local chamber boards or on the state chamber board, because your work, the leadership in the business community, when we talk about leadership everywhere, this is critical, that non-elected business leaders are standing up and helping to calm your community, helping to lead your community, and helping to pave the way through innovation and new ideas and new approaches to get work done, deliver services. Some of you that are in essential services are going to be trying to figure out ways to get stuff done you've never done before. Some of you that are maybe non-essential are going to figure out new ways to have employees working from home. All these things, as Eric said at the beginning, times of disruption, create, 2 outcomes. Some organizations fail during that time. Other organizations adopt. They take on the challenge and they become stronger. And I know that there are many, many organizations on this call that are going to do that. I've been in your shoes as a business owner. I think back, to it's different. 1997, when we had the incredible floods, that was the quarter the Great Plains Software was getting ready to go public. We had to let employees out for over 3 weeks on full pay to go try to save their homes and their community homes and figure out a way to run with skeleton staffing to keep serving our customers all over the world, none of whom were affected by the local flood. And so this is a different situation. When we're doing our planning here for this pandemic, we have to do planning in some ways more independent, because if North Dakota, we're at the end of the supply chain, and if this crisis gets worse, when Katrina happened, North Dakota sent National Guardsmen down to Katrina. We sent Bobcats. We sent personnel down there to help them. If this crisis gets worse, there's going to be no ability for people to send stuff to North Dakota. So more important than ever that we optimize our resources by collaborating among ourselves. And I want to give a special shout out. We've seen unprecedented collaboration in the last week from the healthcare community. As you know, healthcare providers are often, whether it's a nursing home, a local hospital, or a major hospital in a metro area, they're among our biggest employers and a big sector in our economy. And we've had people that are across the street, direct competitors, sitting at the table together, figuring out how they can share supplies, people, resources, solve childcare problems. And so again, I would just use them as a role model for all of you as you're working your way through how to deal with this crisis. Is there's a new opportunity, and that's call up your competitor and sit down and figure out how together you can be stronger together, because we have to suspend some of our traditional views as we pull together to try to work through this. And know that when Brent Sanford and I and all the leaders that you heard on the phone today know that we will never forget under this administration, that every dollar that comes into the state of North Dakota that we get to spend, taxpayer dollar, comes from sales tax, income tax, oil taxes. Those are the big three, from dollars that have been generated by you, been generated by the private sector. We have the privilege to serve in state government, but we know the money that we're spending every day was generated by private activity, and we're going to work to do everything we can to keep our citizens safe and to help keep our economy going during this challenging time. I also want to give a shout out to our federal delegation, but also to the White House administration. They've been doing a fantastic job. We've got to have our third call in 10 days with Vice President Pence coming up here shortly. One of those calls, it was governor's only call. We had President Trump on the call for the entire call for over an hour and a half, answering questions. They've got hotlines open, answering questions. They're doing a number of things that I would call important long-term deregulatory changes, again, reducing some of the friction in the economy so we can be more responsive. Secretary Scalia, who's the Secretary of Labor, proactively called and made a one-on-one call that we had today with the Lieutenant Governor and Michelle Comer and myself, with again, briefings by Brian Clipful and others, because they're working hard on the disrupted workforce and workforce insurance side to make sure that states have the resources. So very proactive approach coming out of the federal government. But again, at the end of the day, this battle is a battle that's going to be fought, locally, in our businesses, in our schools, and in our local communities. And that's why, again, your leadership really, really matters. And we appreciate the feedback. You know how to get to us, any of the business leaders. You can channel feedback through Eric. You know how to get a hold of Brent and I or Michelle, but we're always interested in your input, as are anybody else that spoke on this call today. So in closing, again, I just want to say thank you to all of you in the business community for all you do and for your leadership. And thanks for collaborating and helping us work through to get through this together. And again, keep yourselves healthy, keep your families healthy, because we need our business leaders in this game driving forward. And again, for your team, if you are operating a business, make sure you're operating under the guidance that if somebody's not feeling well, that they stay home, because by slowing the spread, we preserve our scarce medical resources, and that's going to allow us to save lives of those that are most vulnerable. And those that are most vulnerable represent about 20% of the population in North Dakota. We're not talking about 5 or 10 or 100 or 1,000. We're talking about over 100,000 people would fit into the category of over 65 or have an underlying chronic health disease in North Dakota. That's the group we're trying to protect. And anybody that's practicing social distancing, as Dr. Connell said yesterday, is a hero. And so let's help create a new culture about being North Dakota smart as opposed to North Dakota tough. I grew up in an environment where if you weren't feeling well, tough luck, get out of bed, go in, put a full day's work in. That was then. Now we got to be North Dakota smart, not North Dakota tough. And so thank you for being smart, and thanks for being great leaders. And thanks, Eric and GNDC, for organizing this call today. We look forward to working our way through this together with all of you. Appreciate it. Thanks very much.
The call has ended.
This call has been recorded.